The pressure placed on this kid before he ever laced up a single NBA sneaker was unlike anything the league had manufactured since LeBron James walked into Cleveland 2 decades ago. Before most teenagers were figuring out how to make their high school JV squad, he was already destroying the entire state of Maine as a 14-year-old freshman playing against kids years older than him. That is not a storyline anyone writes in advance. That is a real human being operating on a completely different biological clock than everyone around him. He then walked into one of the most elite high school programs in the country and turned a powerhouse into an undefeated national champion like it was just another errand on his weekly to-do list. By 17, he was in scrimmages physically going at current NBA players preparing for the Olympics, and the veterans weren't laughing. They were taking notes. Every scout, every coach, every veteran in those gyms started leaving those sessions saying the exact same thing. This kid is genuinely built different from every young prospect we've seen in years. Then he skipped his final high school year entirely, jumped early into one of the most storied programs in college basketball history, and still won National Player of the Year as literally one of the youngest players in the entire NCAA. The audacity of the timeline alone should tell you everything you need to know about the kind of competitor this person is wired to be. The records started falling from basically the first month he touched an NBA floor, and the league had absolutely no answer prepared for what was coming. He became the youngest player in history to score over 40 points in a single game, then the youngest to string together 3 consecutive 30-point performances without blinking. Then came a 49-point explosion against Charlotte, where he shot 20 for 29 from the field and officially became the highest-scoring teenager this league had ever documented in its entire history. People thought that was the ceiling. It was not even close to the ceiling. Days later, he dropped 51 on Orlando, broke his own record that he had just set weeks earlier, and watched the entire basketball internet lose its collective mind trying to find historical comparisons worthy enough to match what they were witnessing. At that exact moment, the conversation around him stopped being about a promising rookie and started becoming something far more serious and far more permanent in the historical record books. Every analyst, every former player, every pundit with a microphone was now being forced to sit down and ask out loud whether this was the beginning of something truly all-time. The hype had finally found a body of work worthy enough to actually justify its own existence. But nothing in basketball arrives completely clean, and even inside all those highlight reel moments, there was one number quietly following him like a shadow down every single hallway. The three-point shooting efficiency told a story that opposing coaches were studying religiously because they understood something the highlights couldn't hide. Out of nearly 300 players who launched at least 100 attempts from behind the arc during the season, he ranked inside the bottom 15 in the entire league in efficiency, and that is a hard number to ignore. NBA defenses are built by brilliant minds who spend 18 hours a day searching for exactly this kind of exploitable weakness, and once that target gets painted, it stays painted. Teams started loading up on the perimeter, daring him to fire away from deep, and that simple adjustment created real problems in his shooting rhythm and shot selection on a nightly basis. Every single game became a chess match where the opponent already knew which piece they wanted to take off the board first. The efficiency gap wasn't a rumor or a hot take. It was a legitimate strategic vulnerability that the smartest organizations in the sport were already building entire game plans around. The question of whether he could silence that concern became the most important basketball development story of the entire rookie season. But context is everything in this sport, and the full picture of who he is requires going all the way back to a household in Maine that treated basketball less like a hobby and more like a second language spoken fluently from birth. Both parents played college basketball. His mother was a tough, disciplined, hard-working captain who led her program to an all-time historic upset in the NCAA tournament, the kind of win that gets talked about in small-town gyms for literal decades. His father was a long, grinding forward who built his game on sacrifice and work ethic and passed those exact same values down to all 3 brothers without asking for credit or applause. The household atmosphere wasn't casual or optional. Basketball was simply what the family breathed from the moment they woke up every single morning until the lights went out at night. His mother coached the local varsity girls team, and attendance at her games wasn't a choice the boys got to make. It was part of the family schedule, the same way meals and school were. The brothers spent summers doing late-night shooting contests and daily one-on-one battles with real talk shop and real competition before most kids their age had even developed a genuine competitive instinct yet. That environment didn't just push him forward, it created a competitive DNA so deeply embedded that it became impossible to separate from who he fundamentally is as a human being and as a basketball player. And by 6th grade, he was already operating so far ahead of his age group that his mother knew the normal development path simply wasn't going to keep him challenging. That's when the family connected with a basketball-obsessed trainer who had recently opened a small gym in Maine with one singular mission: find young players willing to completely outwork everyone around them. The trainer made a call when the kid was barely 13 years old, reaching out to an NBA veteran asking him to come personally witness something he couldn't fully describe over the phone. The veteran arrived expecting another overblown local prospect, the kind you see every few years in small markets where hype travels faster than the talent does. Instead, he watched a lanky teenager absolutely terrorize players years and years older than him, while showing a basketball IQ that normally takes a decade of professional experience to develop naturally. The veteran left stunned, spent the entire summer training with him, and couldn't stop telling people that the next basketball phenomenon had already quietly arrived in a gym that most of the basketball world didn't even know existed. Back home in Maine, the whispers were already building into something louder. People who had watched him in the layup line before games even started already knew something was fundamentally different about how this kid moved and saw the floor. His first ever high school game drew a packed gymnasium full of people who wanted to verify whether the buzz was real or just another case of small market exaggeration driving a local legend bigger than the facts. Then, a 14-year-old freshman dropped 35 points and 12 rebounds in his debut, ended the night with a game-winning dunk over a junior who was nearly 7 feet tall, and answered every single question in the building before halftime. The state championship followed, the awards stacked up immediately, and a unanimous decision was reached that Maine basketball was simply too small of a stage for what this person was becoming. The move to one of the most powerful prep basketball programs in the country came next, a school that had produced NBA players on a nearly annual basis and treated every practice like a professional workout. He walked into that environment without hesitation or adjustment period and immediately competed as if he had been playing at that level his entire life, which in many ways he had. The AAU circuit provided another proving ground, and at the biggest youth tournament in the country, he carried a roster of overlooked kids from tiny Maine all the way to the finals against powerhouse programs with nationally recruited rosters loaded with future college stars. In 7 tournament games, he averaged over 25 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, and nearly 7 blocks per game, while walking away with tournament MVP honors in front of every major college and professional scout in attendance. Then he reclassified, cutting his entire high school career to just 3 years, led his prep program to a perfect 34-0 season and a national championship, and swept every major National Player of the Year award available before he was legally old enough to vote. By the time he officially arrived at Duke University, the hype had reached a volume that most 17-year-olds would have collapsed under before ever playing a single college minute. He played the first 11 games, averaged 16 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 assists per game, and made everyone around him immediately wonder if the college game was already too small. Then came the moment that genuinely separated him from every other hyped teenager the basketball world had seen in the modern era. Team USA called before he had played a single college game. He was 17 years old, surrounded by professional NBA players, preparing for the Olympics, and not a single person in that gym treated him like a guest or a curiosity after the first 2 days of workouts. Coaches stopped looking at him like an extraordinary prospect and started looking at him like a player, because that is exactly what he was from the very first practice session. On the final day of scrimmages, one of the greatest defensive guards of his generation picked him up full court, trying to create chaos and discomfort for the teenager. He calmly brought the ball up, crossed half court without a single moment of panic, set up the offense with the composure of a 10-year veteran, and drained a cold-blooded three-pointer directly in the face of one of the most feared rim protectors on the entire Olympic roster. The possession after that, he tracked down an offensive rebound over one of the biggest